So we all know, those of us who have been in retail for, even more than 4 or 5 years, we understand that customer feedback is extremely important. It's extremely important. But here's the thing, all feedback is not created equal. But then once you get the feedback, what do you do with it? What do you do? Right? That is a question that Simplesat has answered for a myriad of different retail companies today. On this special edition, this sponsored focus podcast episode with Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, we sit down with the head of growth for Simplesat. And we talk about customer feedback. We talk about leadership. We talk about running teams. But more importantly, the ideas around effective feedback and what do you do with it as an organization. So get ready for this episode of Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy.
Welcome to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, where we go well beyond the corporate playbook to unpack major opportunities, hidden challenges, and critical issues that senior retail leaders face every day. So let's get started right now.
Well, Eric, I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. I think as always, it always tends to happen to me. Like we schedule a time with someone, and it's supposed to be like 30 minutes, and it goes an hour.
I know the feeling.
An hour and a half. So for those individuals who do not know you, because we're going to get into a whole bunch of different things today, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Eric Sangerma. If you couldn't tell by my accent, I'm French. But I've been living in Asia for 25 years now, in China mostly, and right now in Thailand. And I'm the head of growth at a company called Simplesat. It's on my t-shirt. Always proud to have the company's color on the t-shirt. Our goal with Simplesat is, to make companies more customer-centric. And it's a customer feedback platform. And, we offer a complete tool for companies and retail brands to get customer feedback across the whole customer life journey. And we can talk about that later. But as for me, I also like to say that I'm first and foremost a family man. I'm married with 2 kids. I'm also a writer. I would hope to be a philosopher. That's why I'm writing a lot about, trying to find life meaning. And that's what I spend a lot of my time doing on weekends. And also I play a lot of music, hence the cat here. Actually had a DJ gig last week, the first time in 15 years. So I was super, super happy about it.
Oh, outstanding. So, okay, I asked a previous guest this, and this is a part of the questions that I sent you. Ricardo Belmar, who is a massive music person too. If you had to take 5 records, I'm gonna say downloads. I'm gonna say albums. If there are 5 albums that you're you're about to go to Mars and because the planet is dying, and they Eric, you have 10 minutes, you have 5 minutes, and you can only take 5 albums with you. What are those 5 albums? I know this is a super
Yeah. So exactly. So top of my head, I think the first thing I was thinking when you mentioned about bringing some music with me, right? It would be anything by Daft Punk. So, all of their albums. So you have old school Daft Punk, which was more like club, and hard, hitting, and then more like mainstream Daft Punk, which is basically what everybody knows, from the later stage of Daft Punk. So that would be, and I'm not saying that because they're French, or maybe it is, but
yes, it is.
I just love the whole French, scene, French house scene in the 90s and early 2000s. So I'd say Daft Punk. Obviously, during the same time, I also love everything from Cassius, Basement Jaxx. Some old school stuff. And then because I also love a lot of hip hop, I would have to go Eminem, and Dr. Dre. I mean, The Chronic is one of my all-time favorites. So, that would be my answer.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I didn't, you know what? Wow, I didn't know that part. I mean, we've spoken several times, so I'm glad I asked that. I'm really, really glad I asked that question. We're gonna be talking a lot. We're gonna definitely be talking about Simplesat, and the offering there and what they're doing in the customer experience and feedback perspective. But you mentioned your writing because I think your writing will go into a little bit of the conversation that I want to talk about from a leadership standpoint, right? Because
Yes.
massive part of our conversations has always been about leadership. Could you talk a little bit about your writing and then how that has actually sort of helped you as a leader? Because I think part of, as a leader, you always need something else outside of maybe just the leadership aspects of your day to day. And it seems like you've been able to find that niche, with your writing.
I think, I think for me, writing is really a way to be more thoughtful for myself. So for instance, I do daily journaling. I write in the morning, I write in the evening. So, and it's usually everything that is on my mind that I struggle to to make any sense of. And this is gonna go into my journaling first. And then sometimes, not sometimes, quite often, I read what I've written like a few weeks ago, a few months, or a few years ago,
Yes.
to see the changes, but also to see if there is anything that I can learn from myself, from like, myself from way back when. So that's the first step. And then quite often when I start journaling, I realize like, oh, what I'm actually writing right now might be useful for other people as well.
Mm,
And this is when I take some stuff that I write for myself and then put it into like an article, or it could be a note, on Substack. You have the Substack
mhm,
notes, and it can be from anything related to work. So it could be like leadership, management, productivity, or it's more about like like meaning of like I was telling about like philosophy because I'm really into philosophy a lot. So like meaning of life and how to lead a better life, right? And how
mm,
to be better for the people around you because I think quite often we might be very good in our work and very present, So when I'm talking about leadership, how important it is to be listening, right, to the people on your team. But sometimes we do that and we forget to do the same at home,
mhm.
and that's a struggle, Like for I think for a lot of people, is this like how to be okay a great leader, but also then a great husband, great wife, great partner,
Yes.
great, parent, son, daughter. So this is things that I really love to talk about. Is this, and this publication I have on Substack is called Holistic, and it's about that. It's how to develop the tools to be able to manage your different roles, right? Because
Mhm,
we all have different roles. So it's not about being like a better person. It's just about being better at different roles in life. I
mm,
think that's super, super important.
yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out with my journaling. And if I think I've got some ideas that are not too bad, I'm going to share them to the world and see what people think about it.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's interesting because I years ago I was coaching a client and they were sort of frustrated with sort of where they were in their journey, in their leadership journey because of something that their wife said to them. They said, I want the same let's just call him Tim. They said, I want the same Tim,
Yes.
at home that people get at work. And it was just interesting when he said that because he thought that's what he was doing. He thought that he was giving the same person at work as he was at home, but obviously there was this disconnect, and based on what you're saying, there is still this disconnect that a lot of leaders are still facing with,
Oh,
like, who are you? Who
100%.
are you at work? How do you communicate, drive results, get things done there, and then when you get home to your personal life, you may not give as much, or you may see this sort of disconnect, from that person at work. Is your writing sort of helping either connect, that, or either understand those separate individuals?
No, absolutely. And again, mostly, and that's true probably for a lot of writers, we are writing for ourselves first and trying to figure
Yeah.
things out, especially with the journaling, obviously. But even when I put articles online, I put them as reminders of, what I should be doing or
Love
should
it.
not be doing. I mean, a good example that I'm trying to get better at is, for me, it's super important when you're leading a team, obviously, to be listening. And I talk about quiet leadership in the sense
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
not being the loud voice, but really showing empathy and listening, being patient, and coaching and training your teams, versus just, okay, you have to do this and you have to do this before Friday. And if you haven't done it, or if it's not, you get fired, something
Yeah.
like that. So, very basic. And then you come back at home and you say, okay, I hate those type of leaders or managers. I want to be a leader or manager who is patient, who is listening to a team, who give, the tools to my team to succeed. And then you go back home and let's say your son comes back, and he's
Yeah.
throwing his bag on the floor and his shoes and everything. And your first reaction as soon as he gets in is just shouting at him and say like, oh, couldn't you just put your, backpack like over there? And why are you always putting a mess? And then of course this crazy tension, and your son goes into his bedroom, shuts the door, and then you realize like, man, imagine if I was doing this to my team member,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And what I should have been doing is, well, first and foremost, like say hi, and like, how was your day? Not even think about the mess, and just being there and listen, and maybe he had a bad day, so you need to be there to listen to him. So like, all of this stuff that you do with your team members that you're not doing with your families, this patience, this listening skills, that's where you need, I need, and I think a lot of people need to get better at.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a
That's so
struggle.
good. I always feel like, and it's not even what I feel like. I think it's the truth, right? It's that we tend to get more comfortable with the people that we love, that are
Of
closest
course.
to us, and we take that for granted, and we
100%.
we end up acting sort of like, well, they just know that's just Steve being Steve, right? And
Yeah.
we take those relationships for granted. I love what you said about quiet leadership, because we've had several conversations about that in the world now where everybody is so boisterous about who they are, and even on LinkedIn or wherever it may be, right? Where did this perspective from you around quiet leadership come from? Is it just part of your background? Is it part of like your career journey? Like, where did this perspective come from? Because I think more people need to learn more about it.
I mean, many different places, I would say. I mean, first and foremost, I'm mostly an introvert, and I
Mm,
might like do the DJ stuff and being in crowds and clubs and stuff like that, right? But deep down, I'm an introvert. I need my alone time. And I thought when I was 20 years old and I started to be on the market, I saw that to be noticed, and especially if you start to be like in more managerial position, you have to be the loudest in the room. You have to have a lot of like big charisma. And to me, big
mm,
charisma was, like this cliche of the American manager or the car salesman, right? Like big smile, big voice, big dude. And unfortunately, when I started to B, that first was not me, so I was, not being myself, and B, I was trying to do this in China, because I was in
mm,
China at the time with Chinese teams, and I quickly realized that, oh, okay, that's not going to work here, because that's not the way people are being managed here, and they hate extroverts, they hate loud people, and that was actually very beneficial for me because it kind of forced me to be more myself, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all. And I say like, oh, okay. So actually, when I start to listen more than I try to be loud, people start to respect me more. And before, just by telling them what to do and being obnoxious, it never worked. So that was a great lesson to me. And so that's the first lesson. It was coming from the cultural environment that forces me to
mm,
be there.
mm,
And then be also, I noticed that I had managers as well at the time. And I was kind of like doing the same. I was managing people the same way my manager was leading me. But I realized that I hated the way my manager was leading me, which was basically, especially I was young. So I had a lot of ideas, right? And sure, most of
mm.
my ideas probably were not that good. but the manager will always like put me down or put my ideas down, and sometimes publicly. And I remember how it made me feel like crap. And I told myself like, no, I don't want to be this kind of manager, which, don't really listen. Is always putting people down in public when they make a mistake or when they say something stupid. And I was like, and this guy, I mean, I was young, inexperienced. Of course, I would say a lot of, stupid things or things that maybe I didn't know about, but it was not the way to manage me, and I didn't want to do that again. So that's when really it just started to like hit me. It's like, okay, I need to do the opposite. And that's actually where I feel more comfortable,
Mm,
because
mm,
I love talking with people, but again, talking with people, not talking to
yes.
people. And that's where I think um, quiet leadership to me comes from. Is you don't want to be the loudest voice. You actually don't want to be the one talking that much.
Mm,
It's all about really listening to people, showing empathy, trying to understand where they come from, and align yourself to that. Align your management to what people are needing. So maybe some people need more micromanagement, some people don't at all. But it's your job as a manager to align yourself to that. So to
mm,
do this, you need to understand. You need to get feedback from them. You need all of that. That is super super important. And also, I always found when I'm in a meeting room, I kind of like, when I see very important like clients, sometimes they will come like you got like VP of product coming in, and and they just sit down in corners, they listen, and they're super quiet, and it's super cool. I
yeah.
love it. Whereas I hate when somebody come and just like start to bully everybody or start to like basically show like, hey, I'm the man here. So like when you're working with people like partners, customers,
Yeah.
and you seeing this guy coming in, it's just, it feels off, and
Yeah.
I hate that.
Mm.
So, I prefer to be the guy in the corner who's just listening in. And if I have something to say, sure, I will say it. But you don't want to be like the obnoxious guy who just takes the whole room, and yeah, it's not a good image.
Yeah. It's so interesting, you know, because part of, my journey as a leader is very similar in the context of I was just out of the military in New York, and I left New York and I was moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And so a lot of the things that you're talking about, where listening and connecting with people are cultural, even within the United States or even within a country and even within an
Mm,
organization. And when I moved down to
I'm
the
sure, yeah.
South, when I moved down to the South, they don't like loud people. They don't like a lot of New
Mm,
Yorkers. They don't like, we're very
yeah,
outgoing and, and I'm
of course.
25 years old. And I remember, my team was working and they were doing a lot of great things for me, but I had a Victor, and I write about Victor in my book. And I said, everybody needs a Victor. He took me out to lunch and he said something very similar to what you said. He said, Steve, he said, that S, 4-letter word doesn't work down here. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? He's like, he's a fellow New Yorker, fellow military guy as well. He said, that just doesn't work down here, man. You actually have to ask
So,
people how their day went. I said, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, who
oh
cares
yeah,
how their day went,
yeah.
how their weekend went? And he said, I'm telling you right now, your team appreciates you, but they're afraid of you. And initially that was a leadership style that I was used to, right? Military,
Of course,
all of that. And
straightforward. Yeah.
oh, straightforward. It took me about 2 to maybe 3 weeks to really take in this information that he was telling me, and I think a lot of leaders still struggle with this too. They don't take in the information and actually do anything with it. So I actually did something with it. It was a Monday morning meeting, and we all sat down, and I said, "Okay, before we start, how's everybody's weekend?" Eric, you could have heard a pin drop. You could have heard a pin drop. They were looking at me like I had 2, 3 heads. Like, what do you mean? How my week? What do you no? Like, it's not a trick question. Like, how was your weekend? They weren't used to it. They weren't used to it. But then they started letting their guard down. Anyway, I said all that to say is that I think part of the struggle that a lot of leaders have is actually being able to self-identify when you need to make a change and when you actually need to do something a little bit different. In your role as head of growth, we talk a lot about leading remote teams.
Yes.
What and we have a lot of leaders who listen to this podcast are dealing with the same things. How are you taking, your leadership style and using that to impact, the quality of your team, and making sure that they're developing and growing, as a team as well?
Well, when you mentioned like, you went to a meeting and asked like, how went, how was your weekend? I think this type of question is even more important when you're remote because
Mm,
it's lonely when you're working in remote settings, right? And the chance of having in-person meetings is very rare for a lot of people on our team, right? So we do have an office in Bangkok, and half of our company is based in Bangkok. So for the people living here, we have the opportunity of meeting regularly, and that's great. But most of the people on my team are actually in the Philippines, and also in Europe and the US. So obviously we don't get a chance to like really spend a lot of time in person. And being, having this place where, you don't rush meetings. And
mm.
personally, I'm thinking like, with Zoom and everything, we have a tendency of like putting meetings into like very strict format. Okay, it starts at 9 until 9:30. When you think about that, in-person meetings, especially in the past, never happened like that.
Mhm,
People would
mm.
arrive before the meeting, like taking some coffee, have some chats for like 10 minutes before the meeting starts. And the meetings would never like stop exactly at 9:30. It would like bleed a little bit more. And then sometimes people would stick around. So when you're in person, when you have meetings, there is all of this life going on outside of the actual meeting. And side note, I hate meetings in the sense that you should never have meetings if you don't need to have meetings. So let's try to avoid to have too many meetings. But except for like one-on-ones, I think those are super, super important. You need to do those as often as possible, as often as your employees, if your manager or leader needs them.
Mm,
And of course, like weekly meetings with the team because we work in sprints, we work in 1 week sprints. So we have those weekly meetings. So anyway, so to me, remote, you have to have all of those very personal questions of like, you know, how was your weekend? What are you working next weekend? And then even on one, I always start with
mm,
like, what's going on in your life right now? What's important to you right now outside of work?
mm. I
Um,
love that.
and because you need to get a feeling of in which headspace your team members are. Is everything going fine at home? Is everything like a little bit like what a coach would do? Like if you're a coach,
Yeah.
obviously, Steve. So you know that you're always like asking like what's going on in your life. Um, to me, it's a little bit like the difference between good doctors and bad doctors is a little bit like good leaders and bad leaders. And what I mean by that, if you go to see a doctor's and you say, you have some pain somewhere, then he's gonna say like, where is the pain? Say like, oh, it's 10 minutes after you're out of there and you take some medicine. A good doctor, the first thing he's gonna ask is, how is everything going in your life? How is your
Mhm.
job right now? Any stress? Any, and he's gonna dig down at why, like what, not the symptoms, but the cause. And that's what I think are good doctors. They try to see like the whole picture of where your mind is, compared to your body and everything. So for me, again, with one-on-one, especially remote, when you don't have all of the signals that you can get when you're meeting in person. Meeting in person, you can catch some stuff that with a screen, you don't. So you need to ask more personal questions or like dig a little bit deeper. And that's super important to understand maybe why the performance is not, what you're expecting, or also to prepare and see like, oh, okay, I think this person might quit, or I think this person, wants something but is not telling me.
Right.
So
Right.
super important to dig a little bit deeper. So that's what I would like to say about managing remote teams. And one thing also we do at Simplesat. So I've started this monthly casual chat, which is basically every month whoever at Simplesat wants to join, it's always at the same time, same day of the week. It's the first Tuesday of the week, 8 p.m. our time, but then it's like morning for the US, afternoon
Mm.
for Europe. And it's basically people show up and we talk about everything that is not work. So favorite movies, where you guys been traveling, and it's it's like the water cooler moment, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody's
yeah,
together and we
yeah.
chat about everything. Well, like food, we have a lot of foodies, we have a lot of video game people as well. So like there is always like different topics, and it's not always the same people showing up. I mean, some people show all the time, because again, it's not mandatory, and it's it's like an office hour for the whole team to just talk stuff.
You're listening to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy.
I love that you mentioned, doctors. So shout out to my doctor, Dr. Brian. He's awesome. I don't know if I think he listens to this podcast. So shout out to my doctor. He does a great job. He does a great job of his bedside manner is it is off the chain, man. I'm telling you, I love this dude.
Super
Like
important. Yeah.
every time I go in there, it's just a great conversation. And then I leave, and this is what I leave. I leave with, he has a little yellow notepad. And we go through and we talk, and he writes down everything that we spoke about. He's old school. And then this is what you need to do. And then we're going to do this. And then we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I have downstairs on my desk, I have all of the little notes that he's given me since I've started going to him as a doctor. And I sort of go back and refer to them just to make sure I'm doing
That's
what I
awesome.
need to do, because he will check on me. So anyway, I love that you use the doctor. So shout out to my doctor, Dr. Ryan. He's really good.
No, and you know what? Steve? What he's doing. It's exactly what a leader should do in a one-on-one, right?
Yeah.
You take notes and you share that with your team member. And again, it's about the holistic approach of like trying to figure out how you can help them get better at the job, how you can help them improve, and create potentially more leaders on your team as well. So there's this whole nurturing. So yeah, that's super, super important.
Yeah. I love this. I love the water cooler meetup. I don't know if you call them water cooler meetups, but I love that. And I've started to see a lot of other companies do something very similar. Some of the leaders that I talk to, they're doing something very similar. It's not at the campus we talk about the third place, right? But it's at work, it's not so much a third place. It's just hey, you know what? I just want to have a casual conversation. I don't want to talk about work. I want to talk about,
Exactly.
because, I never got into it, but, with Game of Thrones, right? When Game of Thrones was just massive or all around the world. And, we would get on, I'd go to a store or go to a market, and everybody like on the plane, they're talking about Game. I'm like, I don't have no clue what you're talking about. But it was sort of that point of, convergence that everybody wanted to have and have a conversation about it, and then led into other things. And so I think part of what leaders need to do from a cultural standpoint is what you're talking about is how do you create those moments that are outside of work where I can truly just express myself. I can express other aspects of who I am. One of the things that I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before, but one of the things that was almost a red flag for me anytime I interviewed somebody was that they didn't have any outside activities. Was that they didn't have anything else like other than work, and a lot of leaders take that as a point of pride. So leaders hear this. There is work, but you need something outside of work that actually that will help round you out, help make you a better person. Eric's talking about his writing. I'm writing. I love football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, right? You need something else outside of your regular role that will actually help cultivate you and your ability to communicate and see the world differently. So that's my little diatribe there. So
no, absolutely. And on that note, I would add anything that is creative, if possible, because that's the type of muscle that we might not, especially when you're like only doing leadership and management. You're not really in the trenches all the time. I think there is some type of creativity that is lacking. So if you can do any, so like music, arts, like anything that will, play with your creativity. And of course, if it's writing, then it also helps with communication. It could be
Mhm.
podcasting, it could be video editing, it could be all of that stuff, right? So yes, 100%. Like anything outside work, creative is if possible. Physical activities as well. Don't stay in your chair for like 10 hours per day. Movement super important also. So if you have any kind of physical activities, any kind of creative activities, yeah, I think you're good to go.
Outstanding. Um, we're gonna shift into Simplesat here in a second, and I think one area that I did want to talk about that's going to be a really good segue into Simplesat is around feedback, is around your leadership style and giving that feedback to a remote team, to pretty much the majority of remote team. What is your style when it comes to giving feedback? Because I think it's an important aspect of leadership, but it's also an important aspect of what Simplesat does, as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, feedback is super important, and so in a remote setting, especially as a leader with team members, um, feedback is important, but it has to go both ways.
Mm,
So you want to give feedback to your team members because again, you need to tell them what needs to improve, and also like the overall feelings about everything. But you need also to get feedback from them about you as a leader.
mm,
And I think that's something I think not enough people are doing, about asking like how can I better serve you,
mm,
for how can I better serve you, how can I better help you, because again, it's not a one-way direction where your employee or your team member is serving you to achieve your goal as a manager. It's also how can you help them, how can you provide what they need. So asking that feedback is crucial to me. And that's, again, I was saying, like, everybody is different, so I want people to let me know exactly how they want me to help them achieve their
mm,
goals and how they want me to manage them. So getting that type of feedback is crucial. And going back to customer feedback in a company, like getting feedback for a customer is the same. Like, how can you be better with your product or your service if you don't get feedback or you don't listen to feedback from your customers, right? So if an employee tell me like, Eric, your management style sucks. So like, okay, tell me more. Well, I think you're doing too much micromanagement, or I think
mm,
your objectives that you're giving me are not clear enough, right? I,
mm,
I don't have KPIs, I don't have this, I don't have that. Great. So now I know what I need to do
mm,
to be a better leader. For companies, it's exactly the same. Sometimes people don't want, to look closely at their feedback or their reviews. They kind of like hide from it. But how can you improve anything if you don't do that? Like we had some clients at Simplesat telling us, like, oh, we don't get feedback on all of our support interaction. And then it's like, okay, so how do you measure your service team performance then? Or how do you know what exactly the problem is, when people are talking with your support teams?
mm,
And then they don't know, or they don't say, or they say like, oh no, we know it's because of product, or it's because of this. But do you have actually data to confirm that? Not really. So that's why, I think this is something we discussed before when you asked me, why Simplesat, and
yeah.
why I joined Simplesat is, well, first and foremost, the CEO is my good friend.
Mm,
Company is based in Bangkok. At that time, I was not in Thailand. I wanted to go back to Thailand, so it was an opportunity. But I also like the philosophy of, you know, making, basically, we are trying us to help customers having a better experience
mhm,
when, they deal with our customers. So for instance, if, some of our customers are retail brands and they sell online, DTC, right? And we want to help their customers have a better experience.
mm,
And that means we need to gather feedback at different stage. So it can be as simple as, post-purchase feedback, where you're satisfied with the whole experience. It can be a ticket feedback where, somebody is not happy about whatever. So, you go to support, can be chat, can be email, can be phone, and you just say like, oh, I'm not happy, or
Mhm.
can you fix that? Or I want to return my product. Again, you want to have a survey, that survey after the interaction with an agent or with a support team, that's what we call like CSAT, usually customer satisfaction survey, to see like, what, well, were they satisfied with a support agent, and where, the interaction was a problem solved. You want to know that. And also what the problem was to begin with.
Mhm.
And then there is different type of surveys that we call NPS. So NPS is more like for loyalty and
Yeah.
branding purpose. Like basically, would you recommend our product? Would you recommend our brand to your friends? And so usually marketing teams love that, or customer success teams love that
Yeah.
metric. And you have CES, customer effort score. So how difficult was it for you to find information on our website? How difficult was it for you to actually purchase a product on our website? So this is all of the things that brands need to know about this whole like customer journey, pre-purchase, during purchase, and then post-purchase, and then like support if there is an issue, like and then of course with loyalty and branding and perception and all of this. And what I love about Simplesat as well is for our clients, it's like a plug-in tool basically. So if
Yeah.
you're using like any kind of CRM or help desk, so you're using HubSpot, Salesforce, Gladly, Intercom, all of those tools, you just plug Simplesat into it, right? And you can have all of those surveys that appear anywhere on the tools that you're using, right? So if it's a help desk and you have a support tickets, then you will have the omni-channel surveys linked directly to your chat, to your email, and it's very very plug and play. Same with if you're using HubSpot or Salesforce, all of those tools. So it's again easy setup, um, and super important because you want to catch feedback everywhere. So
Mm, mm,
that's,
mm.
some people say like, oh no, I just want to get feedback on, like post purchase, where they're satisfied. Yeah, but what if they're not
Yeah.
satisfied and they go to your support team? You should measure that as well, right? So, um, again, very important, not only to get the feedback, but then, of course, the second step is you need to act upon the feedback. And that's
Yeah.
also where there is some education and training to be done, because even some people are using our tool and they gather feedback, that data on, the CSAT for the agent. They also have data on what are the things that they need to improve. Is it a product issue? Is it a support issue? Is it a pricing issue? Is it like, whatever issue it is? But then are you actually, doing that? How do you escalate those
Mm,
issues, right? How
mm.
do you make sure that your VIP clients are being taken care of, especially if there was an issue, right? Are you actually listening to this feedback? So yeah, this is, the tool is one thing, but this is also like the whole like training part and optimizing part, and that
Yeah,
needs
that's
to be
all.
done.
No, that's awesome. And for those who are listening, if you want to look at the video of this, I have their website up, and it's super intuitive, super clean. The information is extremely solid, but I also have a link in the description for you as well to go check out their website. One of our conversations, and you touched upon it, excuse me, earlier, was that one of our conversations you and I had was around, it's great to get the information and to get the data, but I want to go into that idea around like doing more with it, right? Because it's extremely important, right? And I love what you said too. It's not just about one data point; it's about the entire customer journey and what that experience looks like. Um, in what you're seeing, how are the companies, utilizing this feedback to maybe change behaviors and change perspectives? Because once again, once you have the data, now the onus is on you to actually do something with it.
You're listening to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy.
I think it really depends on the company, how they were already set up before. So of course, the teams using our tool are usually either like CX teams or customer
Yeah.
success teams. And some of them have different departments. So they have like maybe support department, they have like CSMs. So there's like, different departments. And then there's also the marketing team that looks more into, like I was saying, like, brand perception, brand awareness, NPS, this kind of thing. So it really depends on how the company is structured. Especially for big brands, and you have also like, and in retail, you have, okay, do
Mhm,
they have like
mhm.
dedicated online teams, offline?
Yeah.
How do they measure, feedback also in stores, or are they only doing online, or maybe they're only doing in stores but not online? So, so to be clear, Simplesat right now, it's mostly for online,
Mhm.
gathering feedback online. You can use a Simplesat in store with QR code and kiosk as well, but it's the core product is really for online
Yeah.
teams, right?
Mhm.
And so what's to us the most important, and what we advise teams on doing, and what a lot of teams are actually doing, is what I was mentioning about, escalation. So because obviously, somebody that has a great experience, most of the time they are not very vocal about it. People who
Mhm.
have a bad experience are usually very vocal about it to their friends, and even worse, online, right? They will talk about it on social media, they will talk about it everywhere. So you want to make sure that this person who is not happy, well, you know that he is happy before he starts, expressing himself online and to other people. So a way to do that, obviously, is if you have, if you can catch like his feedback on time when he has a bad experience, either with your product or your support team or your service, right? So with a service that is at the right touch point in in his journey, then you know immediately, oh my God, this guy is not happy about that. So you can have our survey, you can push this a notification very quickly on Slack, Microsoft Teams, uh,
Mm.
email, wherever you have something that where you are sure that the team is monitoring it closely, right? So you have this real-time alert saying you that, okay, this person, especially if it's like a VIP client, that you want to make sure that this person get the white glove treatment. But even if that's not the case, you want a place where you've got this live alert of anybody who is not satisfied
Mhm.
about something about your brand. And then teams have different way to escalate this. So sometimes it goes to a CSM that will do immediate outreach by phone or by email or any or chat. And sometimes it go to a proper escalation team. That means once a week to review everything, because again, you want to see trends. You want to see trends of things that are not working. So we have a feature in Simplesat that is called Topics, where AI goes directly into the surveys, analyze all of the feedback, and can give you some type of like topics leaderboards, where it will show you what are the things, right? So it can be, there was delay in shipment. So you have a delay problem, or is the delivery problem, or it can be really like a product issues, and we can pinpoint what type of product issues is coming like quite often. So this allows you once a week to meet with your team and look at it, and then talk to the, department that is in charge of that specific issue, and tell them we have an issue about that. We need to fix it now. So that's how we see people really like
Mm.
targeting this. And then marketing teams really like, we have some live feed of like live testimonials and live feedback and reviews, where you can just have this on your website, so a bit like Google reviews, right? But it's live from all of your feedback that show like, oh, I love the brand, I love this person on supporting. So like all of the
Yeah.
positive feedback
That's
you can
awesome.
showcase in real time on your website as well. So we see a lot of especially e-commerce. They really like that, e-commerce platforms to showcase that on their website. So of course, because it's not always about the negative feedback, it's also
Mhm,
like
mhm,
the
mhm.
positive feedback. You are proud, and it's the same way that you have these escalation systems in place. You can also have, especially when you manage your support teams, uh, what we like to do, for instance, Simplesat, every time somebody says something nice about one of our agents, or say something about our support team, immediately goes also into a Slack channel, and the agent is tagged immediately. So everybody in the company say like, oh, Angel,
Oh,
went
yeah.
above and beyond to help me figuring that out. So everybody knows about it. So it's a good way also to, give thumbs up to your team, because you don't want to be the company or the leaders that is always, pinpointing what's not working, what's negative, because there will always be negative things, right? But you also want to, most of the time, especially if you have a team that is good at customer service, most of the time the feedback will be good. And you also want to showcase that, especially on the individual level, which is why I always say to companies, please send a survey to all support tickets that are closed, because more often than not, the person
Mm.
answering the feedback will probably be happy, with the agent performance, and he will say so. He say like, yeah, this person went above and beyond. They helped me figure that out. They changed my product. I mean, all of that stuff. And you want to showcase that to the whole company as well somewhere, so that people can see. And then it becomes a healthy competition, because
Yeah,
then
yeah,
it's other
yeah.
support agents like, oh my God, this person got all the praise, but so maybe I should do better. I can do better. So yeah, I mean, again, there's different ways you can tackle it. But what's important, going back to feedback, you want to gather the feedback at every touch point possible, and you want to read and use that feedback to improve your service and your products.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I don't know if you maybe you guys do realize this at your company, but everything that you were saying about what Simplesat does and how it takes care of their customers, I heard you speak of in a similar way with how you and your leadership and the leadership at Simplesat are taking care of the team. Right, and I think almost there is a parity, that your company has with how it's taking and servicing servicing the industry and the market, but then you're also making sure that you're actually servicing, the individual leaders within your organization. Am I off with that,
Yeah.
or that you're
No,
seeing that parity?
100%. I mean, you have, it's good to preach for all of this, but if you're not doing it yourself, then what's the point? And I think that's super important for us to make sure that we live what we preach. And that means with our own customers, listening to their feedback and improving our own product, our own service. And we are always proud, to see all of the great reviews we have, all of the great feedback we have. And because that's super important. And we really want to make sure that we give the same opportunities to our clients to be able
Mhm,
to do the
mhm.
same with their customers. And then within the team, yeah, same. Listening to everybody on the team. There is no dictatorship here. Every feedback, every ideas is welcome on the team. And to go back to what I was saying at the beginning, we will not shut down people because they might have a bad ideas. There is no bad ideas, right?
Mm.
There is bad execution, but there is not bad ideas. And whatever the team, wants to discuss or wants to give you feedback, it can be good feedback, bad feedback. You have to be there as a leader and just take it, right? And put your ego aside, and just realize that, oh yeah, maybe you didn't do right by your team members. Maybe
Mm.
you were not there for them when they needed you the most. And that, again, that's not always easy to get this type of feedback or to listen to this type of feedback, but it's super, super important. And then, yeah, you take it and you improve and try to be a better leader, better manager, the same way that our customers are trying to offer better service and products.
Outstanding, outstanding. So what's next for Simplesat? What's next? What's on the roadmap? If there's something that you can share, if you can share it, that's great. If not, and then you can share, and then you have to kill me. That whole type of deal. Like I could tell you, Steve, but then I got to kill you. You know.
Well, definitely a shift towards more and more working with retail brands.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons, obviously, you and I got in touch together, was because I wanted to learn more about what retail leaders and retail brands need in
Yes.
terms of customer experience, customer service, and if the type of product we have, how they would be using it, and how we can build the perfect product for retail brands. So what's next for Simplesat is to be that product, to be the best
Mhm.
customer feedback management product for retail brands online. Because right now we have a product that I think is great for those brands, but I know we can do better. I know there's a lot of features that they want us to keep on building. We just, like I mentioned, we launched a few months ago our AI topics detection, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Excited.
makes it so much easier to look into the feedback without having to actually read everything. And we want to do that. We also want to strengthen partnerships, existing partnerships that we have with tools like Zendesk, gladly, so that our integration with those tools is even more seamless, and even more plug and play for our clients. So that's where we are right now. But like I said, our goal is to build the whole product for retail, and
Yeah.
that's not only means like a great product, but also everything around education, training, even coaching our clients,
Mhm.
to get to how to use our product and how to not be scared of feedback. I'm going to post more and more, I think, on LinkedIn about that. How, like, every feedback, even negative, is important.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
again, I'm talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
negative feedback, not negative reviews. Because if you don't listen to negative feedback, you will get negative reviews.
Yeah.
And negative reviews is the worst thing that can happen for a brand.
Mhm.
But negative feedback, that's okay.
Yeah.
Listen to it, and also let your customers know that you're going to fix it.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't listen to them, they will not know that you're going to fix it, or like, oh, I made a mistake, or we made a mistake. We're going to fix it. You know,
Yeah.
we're going to make our product better. We're going to, make sure that we can ship it to you sooner than what we said we would. All of that. So uh, don't be afraid of feedback. Listen to it and act upon it, and be quick also to act upon it.
Yeah. It's interesting because it almost parallels, a leader's journey, right? So you don't want to get to the performance review process and get the feedback and get whatever that last, bad performance review. You want to be able to take
Yeah,
the layers and opportunities of feedback that you're receiving along the way. So then
of
ideally
course.
when you get to the review stage, guess what? You've seen some change and it's not a negative review. So leaders, think about it in that context, right? Think about the feedback as
100%.
the stages of learning and growing and developing and changing and iterating. And then
Yes.
ideally, it will result, not saying it's gonna be perfect, but ideally, it will result in some measure of a positive or good review, for you.
Oh yeah, get feedback from the top. So get feedback from your own leaders, and also get feedback from the people who are working under you that you're leading or you're managing.
Yeah,
And this way, yeah, you'll get ready and do that regularly. This, again, going back to the one-on-ones.
yeah.
That's a place to do it. Not waiting, yeah, for the performance review, to your point.
Well,
100%.
I also wanna thank you. I know you mentioned, thank you for partnering with Worthy Retail and Masterclass, the podcast, and sponsoring all different things for us. We're
Absolutely.
we're super excited, and we're gonna have you meet up with all of the instructors here shortly, as well. And then, of course, we have this podcast episode of some great things coming up, and our campus development, leadership development survey and report is coming out. So
Nice.
you're part of that too. So thank you for all of that. If you had to leave leaders with, you've said some amazing things here today. What's one thing that you want to leave some of the leaders out there with, from your wisdom, some of your writing, some of the things that you've been thinking about. What's one thing that you want to leave some of the leaders with today?
Um. Okay, that's a deep question. That could be
Yeah.
another 1 hour. Uh,
I know.
um. Well, people always say that as leader you should build other leaders, right? You should make your team as other leaders.
Mm, mm,
But what also you should do is you should let your team build you as a leader. Again, going back to feedback, I think sometimes you're so focused on trying to help your team members to be better, which again you should absolutely be doing. But also let them make you better.
Mhm.
So don't only focus on them, but focus on you. And one of the best way to focus on you is to let them, giving this feedback, helping you get better. Always um, listening to them in terms of how good or bad a leader you are. So that's one thing. And the second thing that I try to have everybody do, and I think it's even more important when again you have a lot of responsibilities, you have a lot of decisions to make, a lot of difficult choices. Um, like, do, if you can, spend a few minutes every day to journal. And daily journaling has been a game changer for me, has been a game changer for a lot of people. That's really where, my I can do some brain dump, my monkey mind just like always working. If I put it on papers, and I feel more quiet, again going back to quiet leadership, and more ready to tackle the day, and I have less stress. So daily journaling is to me has been the biggest game changer in my leadership journey of everything I've been doing in the last 20 years. Having this habit of journaling every day in the morning, sometimes in the
Mhm,
evening.
mhm.
Yeah, so I would encourage everybody to do that.
I would 100,000%, I don't know, 2,000, whatever percent agree with number 1, but definitely number 2 around journaling. I have fallen back in love with journaling, over the last 45 days. I used to journal a lot, in my, younger leadership, and then a little bit in my sort of mid-leadership journey, and then I sort of, when I started doing this entrepreneurial, journey, I really should have started journaling then, but I was so busy trying to build things that, I didn't, right? And, I did a sort of a fast, and, during that fast, I was actually journaling, and I ended up just continuing, journaling even after the fast was over. And during that point in time, so it wasn't even so much the fast per se, it was the journaling piece that I needed to fall back in love with. Right. And so typically when you do, you're faster, you're doing something, you want something, you're looking for something deeper. And which I was able to experience. But I think the bigger aspect of it was, and I talked to my coach and my brother about it, was that it's the journaling. It's the falling back in love with that journaling, and I haven't stopped, I'm in, I don't know, day, I think 47 or something like that straight of journaling. And so I can, and this is not a point of pride, it's just a validation of what Eric is talking about around the power of journaling and getting, especially for me, first thing in the morning, getting it out, having the quiet time and getting it out, and then now I can sort of get on with my day. But I'm also, and you said something earlier too, right? You said something about like going back and rereading, some of the things that you've journaled. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything more therapeutic, right, than seeing your past self, some of the things that you wrote about yourself and where you are, and to see where you are now in comparison to that. I don't know if there's anything better, or more satisfying, and sometimes a little scary because you're like, "Whoa, what it's like,
Yeah.
what was I was in a dark place back there," right? And
Oh,
then but but
100%.
then but
Yeah.
then you're not. So anyway,
Yeah.
did you have some thoughts on that? Some final thoughts on that one?
No, and yeah, and you see patterns as well.
Yeah.
I realized that I was like anxious about the same things, and over and over and over and over again. And then when that really started to click to me, I say like, dude, you have to stop. You have to stop this cycle. And it has helped me actually getting better at some of the
Yeah.
stuff that I had anxiety about, or where I was indecisive. I say like, yeah, and it can be like health stuff, it can be like work stuff, it can be all of that stuff. And I notice that also, especially when I'm stressed about something, sometimes I don't know what the stress is. Like I have more headaches, I have more like I know there's something, but I cannot put my finger on it. But by journaling, it's just like suddenly like, oh my God, I'm actually writing about what the problem is. And I think, okay, now I know what the problem is and now I can act upon it. So yeah, it's super therapeutic, as you mentioned. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like there's nothing better for me to
Yeah.
start my days and doing that, because there's nothing better. I tried so many stuff. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, especially like leaders, are into like, self-help and self-improvement and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Meditation, you
Yeah.
mentioned fasting, and like morning routines. And to me, of all of the stuff that I've tried and done, like journaling is by far the most efficient at making myself feel better,
Mm,
and making
mm.
myself more efficient in every aspect of life, both personal and professional. That's how good it is. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love the fact that you said, you start to see patterns and you start to see the reoccurring issues that, that and their fears and things that
Yeah,
you're still struggling with and dealing with. And then ideally you see the breakthrough that you've been able to
yeah,
have from that and disconnecting yourself
yeah.
from some of that stuff. Eric, we can continue to go on and on and on. I want to thank you so much for being here and being on this podcast. I knew when we first met, we would eventually, in some way, shape, or form, end up here, um, with us, discussing leadership, but also discussing Simplesat and the amazing platform that it is, and how it's breaking down the walls within retail and going to sort of revamp how retailers are using and gaining customer feedback. So super excited and thanks so much for being here.
No, thank you, Steve. I mean, it was a blast. Always happy to chat with you, even if you're not recorded. Who cares? I just feel like today I talk too much, and again, going back to I want to be the quiet person in the corner. So I hope next time we can do another one where I ask you the questions and you talk.
Well, we can. You're part of the community, right? We have the campus voice, where it's sort of a reverse podcast where the members actually ask me three
That's
questions,
true.
and yeah, so we can.
Perfect.
It's a we well let's make that happen. Let's make that happen.
Okay.
Thanks
I'm
again,
a
Eric.
person. Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Steve, and yeah, see you soon in the campus.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.